Today's date is November 13th, 2017. Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of Hit the Books Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Holcomb.
And I'm Emery Saunders.
And we're here to give you all the saucy deets on everything comics this week. For those unfamiliar with the show, we go through our routine, give you the latest news, and then we jump into some topics to discuss at the end of the show and move on to the next episode. If that sounds interesting to you, why don't you stick around, hit like and subscribe, and we'll be happy to see you for weeks to come. We release every Wednesday.
Week after week.
So, Emery, what have you been reading?
I actually just got done reading a couple of different things, one of which is here on the table. Moon Knight Legacy, with a cover that we are going to get into shortly. It was a decent read-ish.
Moon Knight Legacy, for those that don't know, was our variant cover of the week.
Yes.
Last week.
Yeah.
Should probably specify.
Oh, yeah. Last week, which makes it this week's Does the Content Match the Drapes, which we'll get to momentarily. Apart from reading that, I did read the latest in Mr. Mickle's mind-bending adventure, which strongly recommend to any and every comic book fan out there.
Yeah, this is probably Tom King's best work to date.
Oh, yeah.
Outstanding book. Every issue throws me for a loop in a different way.
Yeah, it somehow manages to keep getting better and adding more suspense to what's going on. And, yeah, just highly recommend. I also read, I think it was Venom Legacy, which is not this week's Does the Content Match the Drapes? And I will say that apart from the cover, which is going to be part of a topic that I'm going to talk about later, the content was actually pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is a legacy book?
Yes. Which, because of its holographic cover, made me think it was a Spider-Man, but I'm glad it was Venom.
It tricked you, huh?
It tricked me and reminded me that I didn't know that I needed Venom, the Lethal Protector, in my life. And by that I mean classic Venom. Eddie Brock Venom.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's back, baby.
Time for a noogie.
Oh. Yeah, Spider-Man, you better watch out.
Swirly.
Oh, yeah. My favorite bully to Spider-Man.
Except in the movie.
Yeah, except in the movie.
Check out our Spider-Man Homecoming review.
Yeah, Venom, Lethal Protector. Get it. It's actually pretty interesting. The dynamic between Eddie Brock and the symbiote, I think, is much more obviously like a symbiotic, like loving relationship, weirdly. And it works. In a very weird way, it works.
How romantic.
Oh, God, I'm now imagining romance between a man and a weird goopy suit costume thing.
Speaking of romance, I didn't mention this last week. Shout out to Batman White Knight issue 2 and what they did with Harley Quinn.
Oh, yes. Brilliant.
Murphy did exactly what every comic fan, at least DC fan, has been wanting from Harley for a long time.
To bring the
spoilers,
yeah. Wee woo. That I'll make that noise next time. I mean, it's been out for a little bit. The internet's a thing.
It's been out for a week. It's not that long. We've already talked about backlogs and all these things. Let's give people more than a week.
Okay.
It's one of the best surprises in that book.
We'll give them 2 weeks.
But yes, that's pretty great. Any other books this week?
Did I read anything else? read one of the other issues that is in this stack that we'll get into later. It's, what's it called? Port of Earth.
Port of Earth, number 1. I picked it up this week, along with a few other number 1s I still need to read.
Yeah, that's very much a surprise title. And, oh my God, I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I did read a lot of the other ones. Ragman, love Ragman. So
oh, yeah.
That's an older one. I think they're on issue 2 now. And I picked up number 1 with a bullet because it looked pretty interesting right there from Image Comics there. And then I picked up Slots, which looks like a kind of Vegas thriller, Scorsese type of comic.
Yeah. Slots definitely looks like it should have been a TV show, but we're doing a comic first.
Yeah.
So, number 1 with a bullet also makes me think of a Panic at the disco track.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. I think they're definitely going for a certain vibe with the name and the cover art there. But most of my reading has been relegated to the covers of the week, Mr. Miracle number 4, which we've already discussed. And I've actually been reading volumes of stuff that I started to read but didn't have time to finish, and still have several backlogs of the comic issues in my box collection here. Well, basically, I filmed a bunch of instructional videos, so look out for those. Those should be released before this podcast. So look for them on our YouTube channel. They're exclusively on our YouTube channel because for instructionals, I wanted to have that visual medium, especially with things like bagging and boarding, framing things affordably. As you can see on the wall, I put up my personal comics as decorations for our studios with many framed, beautiful, matted comics. So look to those instructional videos that'll be popping up on our YouTube channel here. Hit the books. For tips and tricks on boxing, boarding, building your box, where to get materials, how to frame things affordably and cheaply. But while those videos were basically rendering and whatnot, I was reading through some volumes that I want to review, and I think this will be a good format for us going forward for our fans. We're going to be, instead of reviewing individual comics or like entire threads where we don't know where they're going to start or end, especially for these issues that number 781, you know.
Yeah.
We're just going to read by volume and review by volume. So the first 2 I started out using my Comixology Unlimited subscription is Nail Biter number 1, which I have my beautiful autograph number 1 there on the wall. Pride of my comic collection, one of them. And Lock and Key number 1, volume 1. Both of which are fantastic books. Absolutely pick them up. Just an early spoiler review without the intricate details.
Yeah.
Pick those up. They're really good if you haven't read them already. Nail Biter is a kind of murder horror thriller with some supernatural elements. And those aren't like driven in too hard, but it's like subtly hinting there. And the way they frame the art and everything, it's done really, really well. The internal art is just as intriguing as the cover art is, and I highly recommend it. It's about a detective who has a sordid past himself, who goes to hook up with a buddy of his in this town where there's just a swath of serial killers being born there throughout the decades. And somehow this guy found some kind of connection, but when he finds him, he's fucked up.
Oh, man.
So this leads to a series of great events where he's working with the local detective and trying to figure these things out. So be sure to check that out. Lock and Key is a book that I read the first issue of and then never got back to it. Lock and Key, also famous because they're making a Hulu series for Lock and Key. So that should be coming soon. And I have to say, Lock and Key is a perfect candidate for a TV show, because the concept behind Lock and Key is that after this series of events in the first issue, which I won't spoil for you, very traumatic event happens, and the family moves to this old house where their dad had grown up, this old mansion. And at this mansion, slowly and surely, the characters discover these keys, and each key has a different ability. And there is a sinister something at work. I don't want to spoil things. But
right.
they find these keys, and each key has a different unique ability. There's an anywhere key that can unlock a door and take you through a portal to anywhere on the planet. There's a death door key where you open it, and if you walk through the doorway, you become a ghost, and you can go and see things just by thinking them.
Interesting.
There's a key that unlocks a person's brain. And this is not spoiler stuff. This is stuff that happens fairly early.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's like it has all the dynamics between the characters you would want in an intimate comic book, and it also has kind of the fun, like, scavenger hunty mystique of, like a Pokemon or a collector, some kind of collectors, which appeals directly to a comic book collector.
Yeah.
So the premise of this book is, while trying to work through the trauma that was inflicted to them through these traumatic events leading up to the mansion, they're also discovering these keys and trying to figure out why they're here, what do they do, are there consequences to using them, is there something else at play. I don't want to spoil too much, but definitely pick up Lock and Key. I will say that Lock and Key is probably the most fun I've had with a comic book in a really long time. I mean, we've enjoyed White Knight. I love Nailbiter, obviously. Mr. Miracle has been fantastic and throwing me for loops every month. But Lock and Key, maybe there's a little bit of bias there because I'm reading it as a full volume and not as individual issues. But
right,
it has kept me intrigued and having fun, and I like the artwork, and it's just everything about it is fun and unique and
I'm
strange.
Gonna have to pick that up.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you borrow it if you want, but I definitely recommend it to anybody out there, and look forward to those 2 reviews of Volume 1 of Nailbiter and Volume 1 of Lock and Key. And I would guess that you're going to get Volume 2 of Lock and Key very quickly after, because I'm enjoying it so much.
Oh, nice. Looking forward to that.
So that pretty much wraps up what I've been reading. Now, for the aforementioned segment, did the content match the drapes? This is our segment where we discuss whether our cover and variant covers of the previous week had content as good on the inside as the cover art on the outside, and give a shout out to the writers. First up, we had a Rivers of London Cry Fox by, let's see here, Ben Aaronvich and Andrew Cartmel. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your names right. But they seem to be British blokes that are basing this comic off of a book series.
Positively British.
And the writing itself is very British. A lot of British slang that I didn't understand. But here you see Rivers of London, Cry Fox. Beautiful cover art. Very kind of telltale-y almost.
How many times do they say bollocks?
I won't say that this comic was bad internally, but I think... and I'm going out on a limb here, I think that this book requires a lot of prior knowledge, because the main character is not even shown in this book, in this first issue. I don't even know what the main character looks like. They just talk about him secondhand.
That is a very weird way to go about telling a story.
Yeah, and you might miss it if you read it too fast. There's one little footnote that says, see blank, see whatever came before.
Yeah.
And it's really small, and if you don't see it, you won't catch it. So for people unaware coming into this book made by Titan Comics, you are going to have no idea what's going on. And these events happen, and they're kind of interesting, but kind of cliche. Basically, there's a kidnapping of specific characters, and they demand money from another specific character, and then at the very end, they call upon the main character, who has not made an appearance or said anything throughout this, to come investigate. That's it. And it's...
yeah, I could see how that'd be a bit confusing.
Yeah, the internal artwork was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It looks like your average comic book. But the story just didn't make any sense to me, and I had no context for any of the characters. This is not... maybe if I had the context, it would be a good comic, but without any of the context of prior knowledge, I had no idea where the fuck I was going with this comic, and I didn't know who anybody was or what these events they were referring to were, and they were using British slang on top of it. So I
can't tell which way is up. What day is it?
So it really made it for a hard read for anybody not in the know on this series, whatever it may be.
Yeah, to jump in on that issue and have all of that missing.
Yeah.
That gonna say points off.
Yeah. So I would give it a rating.
Yeah.
Speaking of ratings, we'll get to that eventually.
Oh yeah.
But our rating scale is probably going to be like a 3-point scale. Thumbs up, meh, and
thumbs
bad.
down. Yeah.
So
we like to keep it simple around
simplify
here.
things so people can interpret things for themselves.
Yeah.
Next up for Does the Content Match the Drapes? We have our variant Moon Knight 188 for our Legacy collection here. And when we gave this the variant cover of the week, we were thinking about this cover.
Yes.
Without the holographic element, because that's how it was listed on the previews. We did not realize this was going to be a holographic cover. I don't know if you can see that with the lights there on camera. You can probably hear it. But the variant cover with the holographic is not a worthy cover of the week.
No.
By itself, it's neat. With the faded
with the holographic, I would say that deserves a retraction.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as deserving anymore. Although the internal art does look nice.
Yeah.
And to illustrate this point, as you look at the front, you turn it to the back where they have this big, giant, bold advertisement for Avengers: No Surrender, number 675. This comic advertisement has a much better and cooler holographic cover than the front. The advertisement has a better holographic art than the cover does.
That is a sin in comic book making.
That is an absolute sin, where your advertisement is more intriguing and more fulfilling than the actual cover. I would actually hang this advertisement. I would frame and hang this book backwards. Because it's great. It's a good illustration of holographic gimmicks.
Yeah,
the front is not.
But the fact that you would rather show the back, you would rather show and frame the back of a comic book.
Yeah.
That is, I don't think I've ever been so infuriated just by looking at something.
We're going to discuss this later in the show, so I'll save my comments about holographic covers for later, but
yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was just an insult to our segment wholeheartedly. I did not realize this was a holographic cover, and when I picked it up, I was like, what why is the advertisement cooler looking than the cover?
What the fuck is this?
So, the content.
Let's go to the content.
The content, again, written by Max Bemis. What do you think of the content inside?
It threw me for a loop.
In a good way or a bad way?
I'm still... It's kind of hard for me to decide, because the way that it threw me for a loop is something that I would usually be like all excited for, but the way that they set up the story for this particular issue does it in a way that
and this is a double-sized...
It seems misleading.
Yeah, this is a special double-sized issue, too, so it's got a good amount of content. And I say the internal art looks really cool. So.
Yeah, I mean, the art looks really, really well done. Really sharp. But the story... The story, I think... I don't know if I was just getting confused at the beginning, or maybe I needed more context going into this issue. But, like, by the end of the issue, I was like, oh, that's what you guys were trying to set up this whole time. All right, yeah. I'm not sure I would follow this one. I've seen better runs of Moon Knight, but, I mean, it's okay.
So our question of does the content match the drapes is a little bit invalid here, because the drapes did not match the preview.
The drapes were
we ordered
deceitful.
It's like ordering drapes online with a beautiful image on Amazon or something, and then it arrives and it's all kind of weathered and torn up and gimmicky and shiny.
You ordered something new and it looks used already.
Yeah.
Like, what in the hell?
So, the actual physical cover, not so great. Advertisement on the back, great.
Yeah.
And then content inside, we're going meh.
Meh.
Yeah. All right. So, do with that information what you will. Again, written by Max Bemis, and Rivers of London Cry Fox, written by Ben Aronovich and Andrew Cartmel. All right. With that, let's get into our news items for the week. First up, Justice League premieres this Thursday, November 16th. Reviews are mixed, to say the least. Most of the reviewers are saying it's okay, it's fun. There's a lot of problems with the story, but it's fun, and the characters are likable. So let me just read you a few of the tweets from reviewers. This is from Jim Voivoda. Justice League is okay, with an exclamation point. It's fun. The characters are enjoyable, and cast has good chemistry together. I want to see more from them down the line. It looks like a Snyder film, but sounds and plays like a Whedon one, which makes sense because Whedon came in for reshoots after Snyder had a family tragedy. It has lots of issues, though, that I'll get into when the review embargo lifts sometime next week. But the good news is that JL entertains. If BVS turned you off, consider JL a palate cleanser. One from Terry Schwartz. I am genuinely happy to report Justice League is a lot of fun. It's not perfect, and it has its problems, but does the job of making you care about these characters as a team by its end. It's also very funny in lots of unexpected ways. This scares me a little because then I think about Ragnarok, which was also applauded for being funny and because it's Marvel, being a great movie. Because it's Marvel.
Right.
But in my opinion, it was not. It was way too much.
Yeah, that's let me decide if something's funny movie, please.
Yeah. This one is from Steven Weintraub. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I have a lot to say about Justice League, but we'll wait until it's released to really get into it. Two important things to know. Stay till the very end of the credits, and Jason Momoa is awesome as Aquaman. Kind of expected that there. It's the best part of the trailers.
Yeah.
And the least CGI. From Perry Nemiroff, we have, here it goes, Justice League is super thin and has some very weak CG. The criticisms we've been fearing.
Yeah.
But it's got heart and a positive vibe that works. Overall, I had a pretty good time and am looking forward to seeing more of these characters. From Haley Fouch. Justice League is solid entertainment despite some problems. They pulled off a strange alchemy that works better than it should. The story is lacking, but the League is great, and it's a blast to watch them in action together. Wonder Woman is clutch, obviously. And from Brandon Davis, we have Justice League is not a perfect movie. It has story flaws and a simple CGI villain. But more importantly, it gets the heroes right. Every member of the League is fantastic, and it's tough to choose a favorite. It's a ton of fun from start to finish. From Mike Rogu, Wonder Woman is wonderful. Aquaman is surprisingly cool. Flash is hilarious. Batman is drunk. The story is coherent, and it's all surprisingly funny. It's not perfect, but enjoyable. Full review to come. From Jermaine Lucier, Justice League. It's okay. Narratively, it's a mess. The stakes don't work, and the villain isn't great. However, the heroes are great, and it's funny, and there's some surprisingly effective character work. I didn't love it, but there are good pieces to excite me for the future. From Peter Sciaretta, hopefully SCIRETTA @/film.
Maybe Sharetta.
That's probably right. Yeah. Justice League is better than expected, but not a home run. The interaction between the team is a lot of fun. The film sends the DCEU in a hopeful direction in line with where the brand should be headed. Flash and Aquaman steal the show. Cyborg and Villain are the weak links. Again, things we could have predicted.
Yeah,
Cyborg
easily.
looking weak and probably being weak as a character, and probably shouldn't be on the Justice League in general.
Yeah, no. Not nearly developed enough.
So those are your early impressions for the new Justice League. We're going to see it because obviously we have to. I haven't seen Suicide Squad yet, so hopefully there's nothing relevant, and I refuse to see Suicide Squad because I will continue to believe it's a great movie based on those trailers and nothing less. I might have to be forced to watch Suicide Squad, though.
I'm going to force you to watch Suicide Squad.
And then we'll review it.
And then we'll finally review Suicide Squad.
Our next big item on the docket.
Yeah.
Brian Bendis has announced his departure from Marvel to DC. Bendis is famous for creating Powers, being the creator of Miles Morales, having critically acclaimed Avengers runs, including the current iteration of Iceman, and Riri Williams, who's the character we've criticized a lot as the Black Iron Woman who stole the technology and is like somehow applauded for stealing shit.
She's supposed to be a genius, but she's just a thief.
Alias with Jessica Jones, which was a great run, and Daredevil, which was also a pretty good run. He's been a Marvel staple for a long time, so it's definitely big news this year that he's moving to DC on an exclusive basis.
I wonder why he did that. Is it because of Batman?
It might be because of Batman. He tweeted he wants to do something with Batman, which would mean Scott Snyder would have to get out of his fucking way, which probably isn't going to happen too soon.
Oh, yeah, no. Scott Snyder is firmly planted where he is.
But this... I even said, I think last podcast, episode 10 or maybe episode 9, DC desperately needs a fresh breath of air. And I think they've been doing it right with Murphy and Tom King and these new books that aren't tied to the proper continuity. I didn't expect them to take Bendis, though, who, while has done some great work, I personally have had some issues with him in the recent years. With some of the things he's been trying to force into books that just don't fit.
Yeah, there's been quite a few things that he's tried to push that just haven't gone well.
A lot of these big events recently, for example, he's had a hand in it, and not unlike Jeff Johns over at DC.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably good that he's moving to a different company, or at least different books,
Yeah.
Because then he has some flexibility to do something new that isn't forced and awkward and something he hasn't touched on a million times, So
yeah.
I'm happy for him. I look forward to seeing what he'll end up doing for DC. He hinted that he has one last final project that he was finishing up for Marvel before he leaves. So we'll see what he goes out with.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a bang in a good way. But it'll be nice to have something new, I guess, in DC. And I'm sure he's going to love the transition from New York City to LA, Anaheim, California there. So, we'll see how that goes. Do you have any other thoughts about it?
Batman. I know it's Batman. I know that's what he wants to do.
That's what every writer wants to do,
I mean...
I think most writers want a chance at doing Batman in some context.
It's like he's probably one of the... I'm not going to say easiest, but probably the simplest character to write for.
Well, he's just got so many tools in the drawer, He's got all these side characters that support him. He's got his interactions with the Justice League you can work with. You have all his crossovers you can work with. You have all his villains, his rogues gallery, which is the primary rogues gallery of comic books in general.
He has the most well-known rogues gallery, which Bendis could literally do anything with the second he gets his hand on.
And you can really partner with just about any artist on Batman and still have a cool-looking book, Yeah. As long as they can do a decent drawing of Batman, you're good.
I want him to do Superman. I really want to see.
It's funny you bring up Superman, because that will be a later news topic about the primary editor of Superman.
Oh.
At least up until recently.
Right.
So, great irony there.
That's a segue.
Not to celebrate a guy's career going up in flames, but, you know. It was very ironic that his final book he was editing was a Superman title. The Boy Scout title.
That's hilarious.
Next up on the docket, the Gotham by Gaslight DC animated movie has received its first trailer, and it's based on the comic book by Brandon Augustin and Mike Mignola, and it will be arriving in early 2018, and it looks pretty cool. I don't know if you've read Gotham by Gaslight.
I have not, but I did see the trailer.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I could watch a steampunk Batman.
The comic was awesome because it launched the Elseworld comics for DC Comics.
Oh.
The official Elseworld.
Yeah.
And
there are a lot of really good Elseworld stories.
Absolutely. And they did a really cool dynamic where they had Batman basically investigating Jack the Ripper and trying to figure out who was committing all these murders as a kind of, 1800s industrial age London Batman.
That's actually kind of perfect for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It's a great book, and they even did a kind of steampunk variant cover in like 2012 or something with DC Comics for a month. And all they did was remind me of Gotham by Gaslight. It's like they looked very much like the Gotham by Gaslight costumes for the DC characters. So look out for that in 2018. It looks pretty good. DC's animated films are generally pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's usually what I would default to for them.
Yeah, there's a few like meta titles in there, but for the most part, they're good. Next up, as we mentioned, DC has fired their editor, Eddie Berganza, for alleged sexual misconduct allegations by 3 former female employees, including unwanted forced kisses and gropes at New York bars and during company events, which had been filed throughout his entire tenure. He'd been there since, I believe, 1993 or 94. BuzzFeed was the first to report it, alongside all the recent allegations against various Hollywood elites. Harvey Weinstein and
Kevin Spacey.
Even George Takei was recently accused of...
Wait, what?
Yeah, of sexually... being inappropriate with other cast members, specifically extras and stuff, like grabbing their asses and stuff,
I will never say "oh my" again.
Which he has denied, but the accusations are going around for everybody. Kevin Spacey, there's others, I'm sure. I can't remember them all.
Yeah, I think once...
the hammer's being dropped pretty hard.
Yeah.
And it's, again, these are allegations, unless Louis C.K.,
Yeah, he did get some recently.
I think Louis C.K. at least handled it as he should have, where he said, yeah, I did that. I apologized. Here's the apology I wrote in 2012 to her and stuff. And, I understand that doesn't fix it. It doesn't make it right. And I accept any consequences. I know I fucked up. He just owned it. He didn't try to hide it.
Right.
Kevin Spacey did a kind of skeevy thing where he, and decided to announce that he's homosexual, to try to bury it in the news, and it did not work. So that was a little gross. In this specific case, Eddie Berganza, he hasn't made a statement yet, but several people that have worked with DC for a while, artists and writers, the least of which is Jeff Lemire, have come out and said that DC should have done this a long time ago, that writers and staff had been pushing for this for a long time, and instead DC promoted him to chief editor in 2012. So, again, these are allegations, so take everything with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
People are innocent until proven guilty, maybe not socially, but at least in the eyes of the law.
Right. He has not been convicted of anything yet.
Yeah, maybe there's more to it. Maybe things were just interpreted differently. And, everybody's been at that awkward moment in high school or middle school or whatever where, they think a girl likes them or they think a guy likes them and they go to make the move to kiss them or whatever else, and it obviously it doesn't work. And if you're in a bar setting or a company party and alcohol is involved, it's obviously not going to make it better. Not to say that it's the right thing, especially as an adult. As an adult, you should probably have the maturity not to do this. But
yeah, especially with coworkers.
these are all allegations until he either confirms it happens or, the evidence is brought forth beyond what has already been somewhat substantial. So
Right.
But this is a big deal because that leaves a big void at DC Comics and brings them controversy they probably don't want to be involved in because now forever they will be connected to this whole like falling out with big Hollywood elites, Kevin Spacey, Weinstein, Louis C.K., George Takei, you name it,
It's like everyone, ever since, as I said before, Weinstein got accused, is like, oh, wow, that guy, the really powerful guy that seemed untouchable, has finally, gotten his, as it were.
Yeah.
Now, like, no one's safe.
Yeah,
Which, I am so glad that these things have come to light, that no one should have to put up with that in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are just really disgusting. I think the Weinstein thing is more disgusting than everything else. Like, if you've listened around to, like, Hollywood podcasts, like Hollywood Babylon or Joe Rogan's podcast,
yeah,
they've talked about some of these people and how, like, people knew, but they couldn't say anything because they didn't have evidence. They couldn't prove it.
Right.
And of course, in Hollywood, if you say anything without absolute proof, you're going to be sued for, libel and or slander, depending on the format you use to tell people,
And not just that, being potentially blackballed from being able to
especially
do any of the work that you're actually trying to get into.
Exactly, especially in the case of, like, Weinstein, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Weinstein had all the power at his studio. If you were on his bad side, you weren't getting the part,
Yeah.
You weren't getting work. You weren't going to be that director or that producer or whatever.
Yeah, and not just for his company, but, like, all across.
All his buddies,
yeah.
So Weinstein is especially atrocious because they literally put it in his contract that if he did something inappropriate, that you would have to settle out of court with him. And as long as he paid up, as long as he paid the money stipulated in the contract, he was scot-free. You couldn't touch him. That is disgusting. I don't understand how that's legally even a possibility.
Right.
And if they tried to take him to legal court outside of arbitration, within the company, then they would be charged with fraud and their contract would be void and they would have to pay back the studio all the money and everything, which is outrageous. And what workplace is that in the first world, is that appropriate at any length? How is this even legal?
Right. It's like having to even go to court with all of that baggage going into it because of the contract.
Yeah.
It just how is it even legal to have that be legally binding in a contract?
Yeah.
It's like, if I act in this way towards you or against you, you are signing here saying that if you accuse me of anything, that you have to settle out of court first. It's like, what? Like, let me make a document where I get to circumvent every law that protects these people.
Yeah.
What?
It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
It's disgusting.
And, it's one of those common things where a certain number of actresses probably benefited from it and did favors to get key parts that jump-started their careers or something, And Weinstein got off to it, and and they don't want to speak up because it might illegitimize their their career.
Yeah,
they're going to get sued by the studio if they say anything.
Yeah,
and they're going to be blackballed in Hollywood, for the rest of their career. So it's just weird that this culture has existed for so long, especially in the Hollywood circles. And now DC has to wear this big black eye amongst all this and be forever connected to these things. I mean, there's other people, like IGN had an editor that had been laid off, I think, a year or two ago, but had been involved in this, and I think one or two female counterparts had accused him of this, and IGN hadn't handled it the way they should have, apparently. Again, allegations, take with a grain of salt. There's always more to the story than what there appears to be, but
yeah,
I think there are a few clear-cut cases where Kevin Spacey's trying to bury it, trying to molest, teenage boys, and
there are too many.
Corey Feldman coming out, finally being able to speak out without fear of being sued by these Hollywood figures.
The Screen Junkies people actually had someone that
Really?
Yeah, it was it was actually the guy who was kind of known for like being a part of like all of their content, Andy Signor.
Yeah.
He had gotten accused of and subsequently fired for sexual misconduct, and it wasn't sexual assault. It was, I think it was just sexual misconduct.
Yeah. For most of these things, to be clear, while the Weinstein thing is especially gross, as far as I know, none of the allegations have been outright rape. It's usually some kind of comments. In the case of the IGN thing, it was comments and like hugging that wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
And then like with Eddie here, it was apparently, kisses, like kissing a person at a bar that weren't allowed or given permission or, welcome. Like groping them, whether that means, groping can mean anything from groping their back, like patting them on the back and hugging them inappropriately, to like full on grabbing someone's ass, or as our president would say, grab them by the pussy.
God.
So again, all these things, take them with a grain of salt until something is confirmed, or, this is taking a step further.
Right.
It is nice to see people that are involved in these types of things being called out for it, whether again, like figures like George Takei, for example, has denied it vehemently, and maybe it's just a shot job where they're trying to deal some reputational damage to him, for whatever reason. But there's also the consideration that this is all storming out at the same time, and you don't know who's trying to grab a headline and who's trying to jump to conclusions, and who had an actual like serious allegation and who had something that was just interpreted as gross and inappropriate. I don't think it's a secret that men in general are criticized a little bit more for their actions, specifically because they're expected to be the ones pursuing the woman or pursuing the homosexual counterpart, whatever. Very rarely are women expected to approach the guy and take chances with the guy and risk things socially with the guy. So again, take everything with a grain of salt. Not condoning any of this if any of the allegations are true. As adults, you should be mature enough to handle these situations. Right. And if you're not, there's an issue there. Especially at the company level, if the company knows this and this is happening in company situations, and it's been reported for years, like apparently Eddie had been reported for years doing this and had complaints against him for years, and they promoted him. Of all things.
That does not look good.
So that's a big black eye for DC. Anything else to say on the subject?
If you happen to be in any of these realms of entertainment and working for these people, and something like harassment or misconduct or assault has happened to you, speak up.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that to a person who's afraid for their career, or afraid about their job, or afraid of about being blackballed, or afraid that maybe they're just maybe they're scared that they're interpreting it too much. He had his hand on my ass during a picture take. Maybe I imagined the squeezing or whatever. Maybe he was just trying to put his hand in the small of the back and didn't realize it was on my ass. Those sorts of things.
Yeah,
and so they second guess themselves and they don't see it as an assault or as a sexual misconduct. But
this is the reason why we have human resource departments.
Yeah,
so that we can go over
exactly
like what is and is not acceptable, and more or less the common sense that should be played here.
Absolutely. And in a lot of these cases, it's a human resource failure, especially on DC's end.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was reported. What I do recommend for anybody, male, female, transgendered, whatever, if you feel that something has been inappropriate or something has been said or done or whatever, first and foremost, make a paper trail. Make a paper trail.
Yeah.
Make a diary entry, don't put them on blast on social media because then you might get sued. But, put a complaint into whatever HR department you have. Maybe tell other employees there, so people are aware, and it's not just some forbidden hidden secret that nobody knows about, that you have to deal with.
It needs to be made known or documented.
Document it at the very least in some way, whether it be through a personal diary entry that can't be replicated, and through HR, through a person, just write a statement to a friend or a coworker and say, on this date, blah, 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 hand it to them and trust them to hold on to it in case it happens again. And for smaller things, maybe consider talking to them about it. Say, hey, the way you hugged me yesterday, that was not okay. It made me feel really uncomfortable. And I would probably guess that 75% of the time, the other party involved will go, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that made you uncomfortable. I considered us closer friends than that. I am so sorry. It won't happen again.
Yeah, that would be the way that I would hope things were handled, with mature parties.
Yeah. Again, we're all adults here, so, things are bound to happen on occasion, especially when alcohol is involved. But I think
people are liable to overstep boundaries.
When things aren't as severe as, say, direct assault or rape, those obviously you need security there. You shouldn't approach the other party in that case. But for smaller things, like things that could be perceived as, sexual misconduct, sexual behavior around you, maybe make a record of it first and then talk to the party, say, hey, that made me uncomfortable. What you did was not okay, and explain how you felt. And I guarantee you probably 3/4 of the time you're going to be okay, and things are going to work out fine, and they're going to realize the mistake of their ways, and they may be so embarrassed they won't even talk to you again, outside of work necessary options. So just handle things with care out there. If you do feel like something has happened in the past, make sure it actually was what you think it was before you put them on blast on, say, a social media or something, because once it hits Twitter and Instagram and whatever else, that's permanent. That's on the internet forever, whether it's true or not, and you can really ruin someone's life and reputation, and possibly get yourself sued if what you're alleging happened didn't actually happen or wasn't the severity that you presented it as. So just a word of caution, but also
don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to come forward and create a record, and defend yourself when you need it. Obviously, these cases, for the most part, are pretty straightforward. Louis C.K. admitting it, Kevin Spacey trying to hide it and dodge it, Harry Weinstein pretty much admitting it, but saying, fuck you, I'm under contract, I'm good,
Yeah.
So there's different degrees of this. Things like Bill Cosby, for example.
Ooh.
That one, even though he managed to get away from the time stipulation, I forget what the legal term is, but he had so many accusers, and after everything came to light, that's when people were like, oh yeah, we knew about it. We always told our friends, don't stay away from Cosby. He's a fucking weirdo, and he'll try to drug you and, fuck with you or something,
Jesus.
So it was known. This is a culture that was known in Hollywood. Same with the Corey Feldman stuff, Corey Haim stuff.
God.
This is stuff that has been reported and, talked about, but of course names couldn't be said because they were afraid they were going to have the shit suit out of them,
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be able to work again,
Like, these people are in need of legal protection.
So
for things like that.
There's a lot of
Corey Feldman specifically.
Yeah, there's a lot of gross things involved here, and thankfully we're in an age where you can come forward with these things. But we'll see. We'll see how this all evolves, particularly in the comic world with Eddie Berganza, and we'll see who takes over his place as chief editor.
Yeah.
So, big bummer there. So let's go out on a happy note. Next up in the news, Injustice 2 has just announced some more DLC characters. And you'll never guess who's among them. Not one, not two, not three, but all 4 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are coming
4 of them
to Injustice 2. along with Raiden, Hellboy, Sub-Zero. And in this particular week, we have the addition of Enchantress and the Atom.
Yep.
So, what do you think about this?
I'm really curious as to how they'll implement that, because in the trailer itself, I forget if it's either Mikey or Raphael who says, "Yeah, let me at him," and Leonardo quickly steps in and says, "We fight as a team."
So yeah, they might be interchangeable characters. Maybe it's their power or whatever.
Yeah,
so you switch turtles.
Like you could switch turtles, or maybe like a turtle comes out when you do a certain move or something like that.
Yeah,
it's going to be a very interesting just implementation of a set of characters.
Yeah.
It's not just one, it's not two, it's not three, it's four.
It will either be the greatest thing ever, or it will be game breaking. It could go either way.
Oh yeah,
I have a feeling it's not going to be welcome at tournaments.
We'll find out.
But it's pretty awesome that Injustice 2 has been getting these non-Mortal Kombat, non-DC characters involved, like Hellboy and the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, these are quite the guest characters that they've managed to wrangle about.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I know you love the game. Again, I still need to actually play through it, but
yeah,
I got it in waiting there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the one fight in a video game that I have yet to have. Batman versus the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see. All comics from Image's upcoming anthology collection will donate a portion of their profits to the survivors of the Las Vegas shootings and their families. So, let's end on a happy note for the news items.
Yeah, that's a pretty happy note. That is really cool that they're doing that.
If there wasn't enough reason to like Image Comics, we talk about Image all the time. We love that they don't cover the front of their covers with banners like this and nonsense, and they don't put the barcode on the front. Image puts it on the back where it should be, so you can appreciate the gorgeous cover art.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
They always have unique adult stories and, a few kid stories in there. They have awesome books, awesome writers, awesome artwork. They're owned by great artists and writers. So
they have Invincible.
They're not in L.A.
Yes, they're also not in L.A.
So there's
stay strong, Image.
There's just a ton of great stuff that Image has been doing, and this charity drive with their anthology collection is just the latest and greatest move for Image and their reputation.
Can I just say that their Spawn movie cannot come soon enough? It's like these guys deserve a big win.
Yeah, so they got a lot of good things going.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully they get more going.
Yeah. With that said, my heart goes out to the victims of the Las Vegas mass shooting. That was a terrible tragedy. Thank you to Image for stepping up there.
I can't even imagine being at a concert and just having gunfire rain down on you.
Yeah.
Again, I was an infantryman in the Army, but in the States, you don't even consider these things like a possibility, especially at a country concert of all things.
Yeah, it seems like the most unlikely of places for something like that to happen.
Yeah, just a guy with no real agenda, just doing it because he could. I guess I guess it ran in his family. His father was a serial bank robber, apparently. So,
yeah, shit.
So there's something there. Maybe, maybe a screening process. I'm all for the Second Amendment. Again, infantry veteran. You used to be a scout sniper. I love my rifles. I love my guns. But you should probably have to have some kind of mental examination. And, you have to get an exam for your driver's license and demonstrate that you can operate a car safely. You should probably have to do the same thing for a weapon, a firearm.
Yes, you should.
Your rights are not being impeded by going through a screening process to ensure that you are mentally capable and physically able to operate these things safely.
Yeah,
I
this
don't
is
think
both
that's...
ensuring that would be both ensuring a right and ensuring at least one level of protection.
And if you disagree, you're more than welcome to. If you don't think that's strict enough, you're more than welcome to disagree in that direction as well. But for me personally, as a person who does handle firearms on a regular basis and has been trained extensively in the use of firearms and used them in the field, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be mentally screened. If you have a history of, say, suicidal actions, or, if you have, felonies, violent felonies on your record, you probably shouldn't. Domestic abuse.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't be allowed to have a firearm.
Yeah.
There's probably something there. If you've been committed to any kind of mental health facility for whatever reason, there should probably be at least a period where you cannot purchase a firearm. And again, there's loopholes where you can go to like gun shows and give them cash and walk right out. But, there'll always be loopholes. But I think you could prevent a few extra things with just some common sense stuff,
Yeah, there's definitely more ways than one to further promote the prevention of weapons getting into the hands of the mentally unstable.
Yeah. And that, my friends, is the news. Again, we wanted to end on a happy note, but then we got into a very dark place very quickly.
We tried. We tried, guys. Maybe things will get better next week. Nah, Justice League.
So who wants to know what we're hitting up this week?
I think I do.
Well,
Chris, what books are we hitting up this week?
Well, Emery, I thought you'd never ask. From Marvel Comics, we have Ben Reilly, The Scarlet Spider, number 10, Legacy, with a very cool cover. We have Black Panther Prelude, number 2. We have Champions, number 14, Legacy. We have Deadpool versus Old Man Logan, number 2. We have Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, excuse me. Before that, we have Doctor Strange, number 381. We have Guardians of the Galaxy, number 147, Legacy. We have Hawkeye, number 12. We have Not Brand ECHH, number 14. We have Secret Warriors, number 8, Legacy. We have Spider-Man 2, number 4. We have Star Wars, Darth Vader, number 8. We have Star Wars, Dr. Aphra, number 14. Fucking nerds. We have The Amazing Spider-Man, number 791. Legacy.
Legacy again.
We have The Defenders, number 7. Legacy.
I swear to God.
We have The Incredible Hulk, number 710. Legacy.
Oh my God, we get it.
We have The Mighty Thor, number 701. Legacy.
Marvel.
We have,
keep doing this shit.
We have The Punisher, number 218. Legacy.
Son of a bitch.
We have Weapon X, number 11. And finally, X-Men Blue, number 15. Legacy. From DC Comics, we have Aquaman, number 30. We have Batman, number 35. We have Batwoman, number 9. We have Bombshells United, number 6. We have Future Quest Showcase, Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Hey!
Number 4. We need a Brack comic. We really do.
Yeah, give me the Brack.
We have Green Lanterns, number 35. We have Injustice 2, number 14. We have Justice League, number 33. We have Nightwing, number 33. We have Super Sons, number 10. We have Superman, number 35. We have The Batman Who Laughs, number 1, Metal. I just want to say something about these comics. I haven't read them, but the premise is dumb. And the covers are horrible. They're like this shiny aluminum color. And they're awful. They look horrible on the shelves, man. I would not want to buy those and display those. They're hideous.
Oh, what? You don't want more Batman?
Yeah,
you don't want
evil Batman.
You don't want water Batman,
Evil Flash Batman.
or evil fast Batman,
Evil Bat Lantern.
or evil Bat Doomsday.
It's too much. Too
It's
much.
like all of that Batman is fucking dumb.
Again,
but Batman White Knight, ooh,
great.
yes.
But yes, these metal books, I don't like the raw premise. Again, I haven't read them. Maybe there's good
Something
writing
there.
in there. I would hope so with the writers that are attached to it. But the covers are atrocious. They're awful. They're awful covers. Not the art themselves, but what they did to the art by laminating it with this aluminum shiny dark nonsense. It's like it's too dark to be shiny. It doesn't come off well. It just looks like a dark blobby reflection that just kind of blinds you at the same time, you know?
It's almost like they were trying to go for, what if this comic looked like there was like metal in the cover?
Yeah, I definitely think that's what they were going for, but the execution is very poor.
Oh.
Again, maybe the internal aspect of it, maybe the actual writing is good, but the premise alone was enough to be like, ooh, I might skip this one.
I remember reading a bit of Batman the Drowned.
No good.
I mean, the concept seems pretty like hardcore, just because it's like, oh, this is a part of the universe where, like, for everything that happens in a good universe, this is where like the reverse of all of the good stuff happens, where it's just like everything's shit.
Yeah.
That would be good for like one 6-issue run that's on its own, like an Elseworld story.
Yeah.
To have this stretched out into like a company-wide event,
It's a little much. Yeah, it's a little much.
Yeah.
And this is main continuity, by the way. Again, another problem I have with Rebirth.
Yeah.
But we'll forget about that for now. Next up, The Wildstorm, number 9. Great comic series. Read it. Plus, Grifter. Duh.
Duh. Guys, read Grifter. He's great.
We have Trinity, number 15. We have Wonder Woman and Conan, number 3, as the final book there.
Wonder Woman.
From Dynamite Entertainment, we have Fruit Ninja, number 3.
Wait, but why though?
You know, reasons.
It's Swipe.
We have The Dresden Files, Dogmen, number 6.
Oh, yeah.
And that wraps up Dynamite.
That's my boy.
From Image Comics. Again, remember, anthology collections, profits go to charity. So, for the Las Vegas shooting.
Yeah, just remember that.
We have Dark Fang, number 1. We have East of West, number 35. We have Evolution, number 1. Generation Gone, number 5. Horizon, number 16. Invincible, number 142. Kill the Minotaur, number 6. A book we liked and was a previous cover of the week, and the content did match the drapes. Maestros, number 2.
Oh.
Great book. Pick up 1 and 2 if you haven't already. Adult. Very adult. If you do not give this to your children.
Yeah, for anyone listening, this is an 18 and older book. I would probably say maybe 19 or 20.
Yeah,
but,
it's pretty mature.
Yes, it's very, very mature.
Gore, sexual content, language, you name it.
You name it, this book's got it.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yeah.
So Maestro's number 2. Next up, Mage, The Hero Denied, number 4. Retcon, number 3. Ringside, number 13. The Family Trade, number 2. And that wraps up Image. From Boom Studios, we have Adventure Time Comics, number 17. We have Fence, number 1, and that's fence as in fencing with a sword.
Ha-ha!
We have Mech Cadet U, number 4. We have Misfit City, number 7. We have Over the Garden Wall, number 20. And WWE Survivor Series 2017 Special, number 1. Brother.
Oh, yeah.
From Titan Books, we have Hercules, Wrath of the Heavens, number 4. And that's it from Titan. From Dark Horse Comics, we have American Gods, Shadows, number 9. We have Briggs Land, Lone Wolves, number 6. We have Jenny Finn, number 1. And finally, Rasputin, Voice of the Dragon, number 1.
Rah, rah, Rasputin.
From Aftershock Comics, we have Baby Teeth, number 6. Unholy Grail, number 4. From Lion Forge Comics, we have Catalyst Prime, Incidentals, number 4. We have Voltron, Legendary Defender, number 4. From Archie Comics, we have Betty and Veronica Comics, Double Digest, number 258. From Vertigo, we have Bug, The Adventures of Forager, number 5.
He is but a bug.
I am but a bug. And then we have The American Way, Those Above and Below, number 4. From Vault Comics, we have Sojakan, number 2, and Alien Bounty Hunter, number 2. And that is everything coming to your local comic book shops.
Support your local comic book shops.
And digital devices this week. Now it's time to hand out the prestigious, nay life-changing award of cover and variant cover of the week, as awarded by your Hit the Books podcast hosts.
Yeah, that's right.
First up, we have Batwoman, number 9, drawn by Fernando Blanco, who drew this very, very cool Scarecrow-inspired Batwoman, where she's wearing the bugles on her on her finger and reaching out. No, she has the little needles that you see in like the Injustice version of Scarecrow there.
And finger syringes.
Yeah. So it's a pretty awesome cover. I will criticize the cover on this aspect. I know it has nothing to do with the artist himself. DC has to put their giant Rebirth banner over it with their advertisements and the tie-in line and just every nonsensical thing you don't want on your cover.
Yeah, so there's a large section of this cover that's being covered by their branding.
And not in a good way. I don't understand why they keep doing this. All the books that they're going to probably translate to Vertigo eventually have clear, concise covers with just the small DC and the small issue number, the price, and then, yes, they have the barcode, but it's tolerable. For their main continuity books, they still have the big, obnoxious Rebirth banner. We get it, but Rebirth and Convergence and all that stuff happened like a year and a half ago, maybe more. It's been going on for a while. You don't have to keep advertising that it's a Rebirth title.
Right.
Please take those big, obnoxious banners off the top of the art, because we can't see the art.
Right. It's like, you guys need to be able to trust us to understand what it is that we're buying.
And this one is particularly bad because the hand is, up on the left corner, and the banner goes over the hand and like parts of the artwork in the top left corner. That is important to the whole picture.
Right. It's obscuring like part of the reason why you bought the comic in the first place.
Yeah. But shout out to Fernando Blanco for this great cover, and hope to see more from you. Next up, our variant cover of the week goes to IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 76, 1 out of 25 cover variant by Kevin Eastman. And this cover is pretty baller. It just has like these broad brush strokes. It has kind of the I don't know if Eastman was the one who did the Batman Ninja Turtles crossover book, but it looks very much in that vein.
Oh yeah. It comes to no surprise that it is as limited as it is, given that Eastman was one of the two people that came up with the Turtles in the first place.
Yeah, but it's no surprise that this is our cover of the week, seeing that Injustice just announced the 4 Ninja Turtles being the DLC additional character along with Enchantress and the
Atom.
The Atom,
yeah,
for the new Injustice game. So that's not why it's the cover, but this cover just happened to come out in a great week for the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah.
Announcement-wise.
Yeah, Eastman knows how to make these turtles pop.
But Eastman did a great job with like using light from the sunrise, I'm guessing there. Silhouetting the turtles as they're all jumping in acrobatic poses with their weapons out and stuff,
Jumping.
Leonardo,
flipping.
obviously leading the charge from the front.
Of course.
Great. Just a great overall cover. Just great job, Eastman. This
Yeah.
is awesome. But I think this one's probably worth the investment if you like Ninja Turtles at all.
Oh, yeah. I would easily frame this.
So, congratulations to Kevin Eastman for being our variant cover of the week. Remember, you can always check out if the content matched the drapes the following week on our next podcast if you want to know if the writing was just as good as the artwork on the outside. So be sure to check that out the following Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
And for our new friends out there, this is the part of the show where we each discuss a topic of our choosing about the world of comics. Emery, what's your topic this week?
My topic this week is when a gimmick doesn't work.
Wow. You don't think there's any foreshadowing to this topic?
None at all. Quite a bit with this one, but more so with the issue that I picked up with it was Spider-Man on the cover of a Venom comic.
Yeah.
And it's just something about the way that the holographic image it doesn't blend. Here's the thing. It does blend. It blends to the point where I can't tell what the fuck I'm seeing. That's the thing that's counterintuitive to the concept of having a cover on the front of a comic book. I want to be able to enjoy or maybe even display like what it is that I just purchased.
Yeah.
And I can't. Because I can't for the life of me think that I would ever want to nail something to my wall that I can't tell what it is.
Case in point.
Yeah.
The Moon Knight variant for those of you that are not watching our YouTube video. Again, the advertisement. I would absolutely hang up the advertisement on the back for Avengers No Surrender.
Yeah.
But the Moon Knight cover itself looks like garbage.
Yeah.
It's not really doing anything. I guess the guy in the background kind of does something, but that's about it.
The thing about this is that I remember being really into these things as a child.
Well, I will say this. For the holographics themselves, DC tried to start a trend, I think, in 2011, 2012, maybe. It was in the middle of the New 52 is when they were doing their Forever Evil line. Or no, it was before that. The first time they did it, it was... No, I'm right. It was Forever Evil.
Yeah.
They did a big, huge variant issue of just about every comic they had at the time. And again, this is right after New 52 had officially launched, so it was a big event. There's a lot of variants. But basically, they took just about every book they had and took at least one, if not up to 4 villains from that character's line. So obviously, Detective Comics had a bunch, Batman had a bunch, Batman and Robin had a bunch, because Batman's Rogue Gallery is the best one.
Yeah.
So they took all of these covers, they made a unique story for the villain. It would be like Batman issue 23.2 or 23.3, and each one would be about a specific villain. And they had really, really cool holographic portraits of the villains doing something cool, and it was they were very 2-stage animations, very simple, so you didn't have this weird blending like you have in this one where it looks like they tried to do 4 different animations into one and it just doesn't blend well. But those Forever Evil ones were fantastic. I tried to collect every one. I think the only one I'm missing is Deathstroke, and that's why I don't have them framed. But I adored those ones, and I sought out every single one I could because they looked awesome, and they were full page. They didn't have the banners taking up any space. It wasn't like this Moon Knight one, which just has one bar. It's fine for a standalone art piece, but when you're trying to animate it and make it move and stuff, it looks horrible.
Yeah,
because it's too dark for holographic. One thing about holographics is they need bright colors. And that's what DC's Forever Evil line did well. They put bright colors and cool context, and you might see the hero in the background, tied up or something, and the villain doing something animated, or, maybe for Darkseid, he had his laser beams, his Omega beams shooting out of his eyes on one angle, and then the other angle, he was just, standing there with his eyes glowing, and, Joker would throw like the laughing teeth or whatever, and then they blow up or whatever in the next panel, and they just had all the cool things you could imagine, and that was when it was done well. I have yet to see an iteration of this done well since that Forever Evil event, and I know for a fact that it made them a lot of money. Because it was so liked and so cool and unique. And I don't know if they had done it before, if issues had been done like that before, but it was definitely unique to the period. And the following year, they tried to cash in on this again, and it did not go as well. For the Forever Evil storyline, that was 52 issues long for the Batman, the Future's End, the Future End storyline with Batman Beyond. They tried to do variants for that where they had the current versions of all these new 52 characters or villains or whatever the case was, depending on the book, and then you would flip it and it would be the future version of whatever. And it could have been a cool concept, except instead of doing the full page like they had done previously, this time they opted to put a huge border around a tiny portrait in the 3D art. So the 3D art itself was, I would say, about a quarter of the page.
Just about right in the middle.
Of the total surface area. It was about a quarter of the page. And you run into two big problems with this. One, you're screwing the people that want to collect these covers. They want a big image that they can display in their home, as you can see behind us. They don't want a little bordered portrait, They're going to provide their own border when they hang these things up. And the second problem you run into is that the image gets shrunk so small because of these big purple borders or red borders or whatever they use for that specific comic. For some reason, the Harley Quinn one keeps popping in my head where they had, Joker and her fight or getting married or something, and then the future version, like Harley's trying to kill him or something, But the thing is, the images were so drastically different that they didn't blend well. Like you were saying for these Marvel ones, they didn't blend well because they were drastically different images. It wasn't like the Forever Evil ones where it's just same character and then the character does an action in the same context.
Yeah.
This was completely different context, completely different setting. Even the border might have some rain on it. I think that's what they were trying to do, but it just wasn't executed well. The border was way too big. The image was way too small to hold the detail it was trying to depict. And since the whole image was in the center, when you do the transition, it wasn't smooth. It was all blurred. I don't think I could hold it at any angle and have the full image, one way or the other, appear. It was always blended.
That is actually the experience that I had with the issue of Venom that I got.
Yeah, and I can see that with Moon Knight clearly, where they tried to do a little thing, but it just blends so much that it just doesn't work. You can't get a single still image. The ideal way was if you approach this comic from one direction, you see one thing, and then as you walk by it, you see the other thing from the opposite, angle,
right,
based on how the light bounces off of it. That's the ideal picture, and for that you need simple but vivid artwork in the same or at least a similar context. In this case, it's similar context, but it's such a small image compared to the rest of the cover that they don't have enough room to work with, and they use dark colors because it's just gray and black, and because of the hologram effect, it diminishes how vivid the colors are on the cover. So I haven't seen it from DC since that Future's End storyline, and I think that was 2 or 3 years ago now. So
DC probably wised up.
I think they realized, they lost a lot of money. At least shop owners probably lost a lot of money on that, because they expected it to be as collectible as the Forever Evil one with all the villains, and it was not. So it's not that the concept doesn't work, it's just in practice, the second iteration where they tried to shrink everything down and put these borders on them or whatever, it was just a bad way of going about it, you know. So there is a right way to do this. It's not a horrible thing to do, and it's nice as long as you have the alternative. If we could go into the comic shop and just pick up this cover, that would be great.
Yeah,
but
I would have preferred that.
You can't. They're all this.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that at least DC did right. They gave you both options, both times.
I would have liked that.
They did not for these Marvel ones, at least from what I've seen this past week.
Yeah.
Other gimmicks we talked about, obviously the metal books, where they're trying to make it a metal-looking cover, but all they do, because the colors are so dark and the artwork isn't great, it just looks like a big silvery dark blob.
Shiny blobular colors.
Yeah. You can't read what's on the title there. You can't really make out always what's going on unless you look real close sometimes.
Now, that is the type of thing that would just push me away from a book that I might have been considering.
Yeah.
But in like seeing something like that, and just like, no.
It's funny you say that, because that's exactly what happened to me. I looked at those books and I was like, what the hell is that? I was like, I can't even make out what it is. And I pulled it out. I was like, is this supposed to be the metal cover? Is that what these are? And then I started seeing them like every week, and I was like, ugh. Like, they look so horrible on the shelves. Like, how can comic shop owners hope to even like push these out, you know?
Right.
It's awful. It doesn't sit well on the shelf. I don't know if they do a test run of these before they go, all right, order the whole thing, you know. I hope they do. Right. It would make sense, but I kind of feel like
definitely needs to be like an editor overlooking that last bit, like concerning the cover art.
Exactly. And I feel like in this case, you know, they probably I feel like if I wasn't giving them the benefit of the doubt, you know, they did just like come up with the concept and go, that sounds cool, and ordered it, and it didn't come out like they thought it would.
Yeah, let's do it, and shit, this is awful.
Yeah.
Let's commit to our decision.
So yeah, there are the shiny covers from time to time. I remember especially in the 90s, I think the first issue of Robin I have, the first printing of the first Robin book in the 90s that I have was one of those shiny, like kind of hardcover issues, and I still have it. I like that. Okay. I want to say Valiant. I'm pretty sure it's Valiant for all of their initial books, you know, Bloodshot and stuff. Like, when they started, all of their covers were shiny. And it was the worst. It was the worst. They are so hideous, and I have a few of them, but they are hideous. They are ugly.
That is a shame.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that could sink an up and coming comic book company.
Absolutely. And I think they were trying to like get the flashy cool things to get the kids to buy them off the shelves, but I think especially in today's market, you're not really seeing kids as much purchasing these books. Usually what happens is the adult or the older teenager in the house likes comics and takes their, you know, son, daughter, younger sister, brother, cousin, whatever, to the shop with them, and then they go, oh, there's a kids section, go grab one, and I'll go I'll go get what I want, you know.
Right.
And you can get one or two while we're here, you know. That's usually what I've seen happen, but yeah, I mean,
yeah, it just seems like there are tactics that would work on a child that they don't work on someone like me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Variants in general are a gimmick.
Oh,
True or false?
Yeah.
I mean,
like the concept of doing a variant cover to sell an issue of a comic book that's already been out.
yeah.
Yes, that is a gimmick.
So I think this has become, I wouldn't say a problem because obviously it's selling well enough for them to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Between DC and Marvel specifically. Maybe, we talk about IDW and Dynamite, having nothing but variants every week too. So
yeah, that's true.
there's other examples out there, but I think at a point you wonder about what the costs of making all of these different variants every week. Like they had the action figure variants, which are awful.
Yeah.
They had the album cover variants, which could have been cool, but the way they had the banner over them, like the big red Marvel banner, and then like the Digital First Now banner on the bottom, and then like the artwork itself was boxed in a corner instead of being the full page because, again, album arts are square. So it's kind of hard to put it on a comic book, which is 8x11. I'm not 8x11, but, somewhere around there.
It just...
probably closer to like 7.5 by 11 or whatever, but
yeah,
they just didn't work. And DC's had a lot of hits and misses. Like I like when they did like their monster variants for Halloween. That was cool. I don't think they did it this year, unfortunately, but they had some variant collections that were really cool. The steampunk ones were super collectible. Those ones were gone in a heartbeat. I still have less than half that collection because I just couldn't find them. I went in the day of and they would be gone because they were so collectible and so cool.
Yeah.
The Forever Evil was a good example. The holograms. The Future's End was not. But they've done shiny covers, which I was like, oh, that doesn't look good. I mean, they've done, they have guest artists on, which is what variants are supposed to be. Variants traditionally have been, we're releasing this issue, or we're releasing the first issue of this new book, and we brought in a few guest artists to come make some variant covers. We have a few 1 in 50s, we have a few 1 in 100s, we have, a few 1 in 25s, you name it. But recently it's just been a flood of variant covers, and I think it in and of itself is a gimmick to attempt to sell two issues to the same collector or something, that just, has to have that issue.
Which, and there's pros and cons to that particular gimmick. It's like you can, as a company, see that as a way for someone to say, maybe look at that book when they didn't look at it before. It's like, oh, that's an interesting cover. Which
is demonstrated by our variant cover of the week segment, and then buying it to read the content.
Oh, yeah. But then there's the negative portion of that where, and this has happened to me, I think, a couple times, where I would buy what turned out to be a variant cover of an issue that came out already, and I will have bought it not with the intent of actually getting the variant cover to like be different, and I would think to myself, did I just buy the same comic book twice?
Yeah.
Is like, did I just go in here and say, that one, that looks cool. Mm-hmm. Wait, I already have this.
Yeah, I've definitely been burned by that before, especially if I buy it the week it comes out, and then I go back a week later or 2 weeks later and I see it, the variant of it, and I don't realize it's the same fucking issue. So yeah, I've been burned by that before. I'll be making a few more instructional videos after this initial launch, one of which will be how to identify first, second, third printings, how to identify variants from the original cover if you don't already know which one is the right one, based on the serial numbers. So look forward to that too. Our current instructional listing that's going to be up hopefully by Wednesday, guiding you through bagging and boarding, guiding you through how to construct your box properly, and if you're getting resistance from the box, you're probably doing it wrong. You should not be getting resistance from the box.
The box should be pretty straightforward.
I demonstrate how to organize your collection inside the box and make sure that they're not falling over on themselves and damaging themselves. How to protect the outside comics from being damaged by your fingers when you put them through the holes to pick it up. How to label your comics inside with boards and sticky notes. Just a bunch of tips to help you out. How to very, very cheaply frame and mat your comics and make them very nice looking, as you see behind us. So definitely check those instructional videos out on our YouTube channel. Again, we want the visual media or medium for instructional content, so you got to check out our YouTube channel for that. Hit the books on YouTube. So just put it in the search bar, because we don't have a vanity URL from YouTube yet.
Not yet.
Put it in the search bar, hit the books podcast will pop up pretty quickly. Any other gimmicks you wanted to discuss specifically for comics?
Well,
I mean, making a comic book series based on a statue, as we had with Gotham City Garage.
That just has a lot of
that's a gimmick.
Very clear issues.
Yeah.
I think at the core of what I'm bringing up is putting out a quality product and not trying to rely so much on something that is going to sell that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about that. Any of you watching, if you have any gimmicks that you'd like to tell us about, go ahead and leave that in the comments.
All right. Well, on to my topic, I suppose. I want to discuss in the wake of Bendis leaving Marvel and going to DC. There's been a lot of Twitter chatter and media chatter, both positive and negative, about his record with Marvel and the stories he's written and the changes he's made. For example, he made a situation where Iceman is homosexual and is dealing with these issues with his immediate family, with his fellow mutants, with obviously the people he's had previous heterosexual romantic relationships with after coming out. So that's been an interesting dynamic. I know you weren't as hot on it, but I thought it was a cool dynamic.
I mean, it's an interesting one. It's just that specifically for Iceman's parents, he kind of goes back on what they were and kind of rewrites them to fit the narrative.
Yeah.
Which is something I kind of take issue with.
Okay. Again, I haven't read it. All I know is the premise.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm basing this off of. But there's other things he's done that I probably agree with the kind of Twitter chatter a bit, with the big events that he's been involved with at Marvel. Riri Williams, I have a lot of issues with. Speaking of our prior topic, gimmicks,
yeah,
taking a current mainstream character and changing their sex, gender, identity, history, and applying all of that without good context, just to sell more issues or be patted on the back for being more diverse or whatever the case may be, without the content to warrant it. I take issue with that, and I think Bendis has been a big proprietor of that. But he's also had great, narrative lines with, say, Daredevil and Alias. He had great runs there. I haven't read the Avengers runs, but I've heard they're good. I've never really cared about the Avengers personally, but
Ultimate Spider-Man, I'll put that in there.
Ultimate Spider-Man with Miles Morales. Which obviously Spider-Man Homecoming takes a lot from.
Yes.
So I think Spider-Man Homecoming has a lot to thank Bendis for.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
But I was wondering, how do you think companies like Marvel, like DC, like Image, like Vertigo, name anything, how should they handle these kind of criticisms over the internet? And which ones should they take account of? For example, should they be looking at all the Twitter chatter about, criticisms of storylines, or we've been very critical of Rebirth. Now, granted, fans have been critical of Rebirth for DC, but the media in general has been applauding Rebirth because it gave everybody a little bit of what they wanted. But in my opinion, as a fan who reads these books, I feel like the whole is diluted severely by trying to give everybody what they wanted. Whereas New 52, they tried something new. They gave writers a new foothold to try something new. And I think that was good, and they probably should have stuck with it. You know, if you want to tweak something, you know, whatever, you know, have a Flash event. But don't do this thing like Marvel did with, you know, the Secret Wars or whatever, where they just put everything in a hodgepodge together, make them fight, and keep the ones they like the most, you know?
Yeah.
I was not on board for. And we've talked about continuity in general, so these are the types of criticisms that we have as fans, but then the media also tends to applaud them for things that fans might not always do.
Right.
And, you know, on social media, you usually don't hear as much of the encouragement, although I think it's getting better now as the social media age evolves.
Yeah.
I know
little by little.
I try to put out positive stuff. I mean, recently, DC, you can check my Twitter at HalenFox27. I put, maybe it was actually on the Hit the Books post. It was probably in Hit the Books. At HTVvids on Twitter. But DC had advertised their tie-in comic for the Batman and Harley Quinn movie, the animated movie, where they have a notorious scene where Nightwing basically gets raped by Harley Quinn, but is like okay with it, I guess. Yeah. She literally knocks him out, ties him to the bed, and then has sex with him involuntarily. But apparently we're going to applaud this and say it's cool because, you know, it's Harley.
well, in the
but then
animated movie, it's more that he does get knocked out and tied up, but he wakes up before any
but he
of that
does.
happens.
He clearly doesn't consent. He's just like raised eyebrow. Ooh,
like wait, hold on.
And then she just does her thing, and he's totally cool with it. You know. This fucking nasty girl that's had her pussy on Joker's dick. Yeah. But, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
In this comic, they drive it extra hard before this event has even taken place, where he goes to that superhero cafe or whatever.
Yeah.
And literally the DC account goes, Nightwing's extra thirsty. And the panels show Nightwing going through this club looking at the Harley Quinn waitress. And then she turns around and it's not the real Harley Quinn. And he goes, you don't have what I'm craving. And he walks away. And then as he's walking away, the waitress stares at his ass as he walks away.
Oh my god.
And all I posted, I retweeted it and then put facepalm. It's just so bad. And I hate that
that was too much. That was way too much.
You know, I tweet that facepalm. Subtle criticism, I think, is pretty clear, and I think the panel itself speaks for itself as being cringeworthy.
Yeah,
and I think DC Animated has had a few of these cringeworthy moments this past year, especially with Batman having sex with Batgirl for no reason.
I
forgot
about that
at the beginning of the movie for no reason. And a very good arc, but in a very poorly executed movie, unfortunately.
Hashtag bad sex.
Bad sex is fine when it's appropriate, but
yeah,
having sex with your cohort's teenage daughter, where there's no prior relationship, yeah, it's a little weird, a little not okay. But
yeah, I don't care if she does initiate. You should say no. You should say no.
I mean, you're fucking Batman.
You are a father figure to this girl. This is you're taking advantage in this way, no matter how much she wants it.
Yeah.
It's just no. You are Batman.
So there's definitely valid criticisms out there. Yeah. And I just wonder, how do the companies address things? How do they react to these criticisms or praises? You know, and which ones should they take to heart the most?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
I mean, obviously, you know, people our age aren't going out doing polls, you know, to let them know, you know, we're not doing telephone polls like they used to back in the day, you know. So
we're not trying to kill Jason Todd.
So basically all they have to go on is sales, reactions from social media, and reactions from media outlets. And I think those are three very, very different things. Because let's face it, you know, most people on social media are going to be the negative crowd that shout the loudest.
Yeah.
So they might have problems, but usually they're a little overblown and they're not quite as severe and they don't need to be as addressed quite as immediately as some people might think. Some are very valid. Some, well, it's a little overblown. You're just dramatic because you don't like this specific thing in this specific context, and you don't ever tweet anything positive, so it just looks like you hate everything, from this group. Then you have the media, which is obviously clickbaiting 99% of the time. And usually it's because they're either crucifying somebody for doing something that's not new age friendly, or patting them on the back for doing something that is new age friendly. And sometimes this blows up in their face, but as we saw with the transgender Batgirl villain and the reboot of Batgirl, but
which in both counts was a shame.
For the media, if you only go by the media, you end up with a very, very skewed, clickbaity opinion that is not representative of the whole at all. Sometimes it's pretty consistent, but very rarely, especially if you're getting it from all of these sources that are very clickbaity, like BuzzFeed or something like that, And then you have the third dynamic, which is sales. And let's face it, if you went by sales, DC would only sell Harley Quinn and variants of Harley Quinn, and maybe a Batman cover.
To sprinkle that in there.
Marvel would probably only sell, X-Men and, Jean Grey, variant covers or something along those lines,
Yeah.
Emma Frost variant covers forever,
Yeah,
if you went by sales.
If you went by sales, you could sell a cover with Emma Frost with Jean Grey as well on like every issue of anything you're publishing.
And there's some companies that are very guilty of doing the sale basis interpretation of everything, where it's just nothing but Betty Page variants and nothing but Vampirella variants, I'd say like 80% of their release stock is Vampirella, Betty Page, So those are three very different points of authority for these comic companies to base the demand on and base what they see as not only preferred, but also okay in the current social environment or whatever. What buttons are allowed to be pressed and what buttons are not allowed to be pressed. What will maintain their franchise and what's a risk they're willing to take financially. These sorts of things. It's a very hard issue, and I don't know if there's a good way to give feedback. I mean, I guess in Comixology you got the star ratings you can do. I guess you could use that to supplement things. But again, that necessitates you to get the references from, a digital resource where people are not collecting these books, to save on their homes. For example, if I read this Moon Knight comic on Comixology and all I had was this flat cover to go on Comixology, I give it a pretty decent rating. I'd be like, that's cool. Nice cover. I liked it, But actually picking it up and holding it in my hand and seeing this like awful version of this holographic cover art, it doesn't work for me. And it would absolutely dock what I would rate it. If it's made of like a flimsy material that tears very easily or cracks very easily, that's going to make me, as a collector, not like it as much. But how do I tell the comic company that, other than being like excessively critical on Twitter, that they're just going to wave off and be like, yeah, that's the internet. No media source is going to be, comic covers are made too flimsy now, No,
it would be easy to try to actually directly relate that information, and then just get lost in a sea of a bunch of other people's comments.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a good solution for it, What you have your local comic book shops hand out a survey every time you come back in for more comics, and then it's probably only going to go to the people that have a pool. I don't have a pull because I don't buy the same comic every week, you know?
Right.
It's just not... You get a discount if you get a pull with your local comic book shop, but that would require you to get the same 5, 6, 7 books every month, which I don't do. I jump around. I look at different things, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you handle this issue? I mean, again, you can supplement like at least story content with Comixology, but even then, you're only going with a certain amount of readers, you know?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the collectors and hardcore of comic book fans that do collect these in boxes and board them and bag them and throw them on their walls or whatever else.
Yeah. As far as relaying criticism goes, I think one of the unfortunate things about that, at least that I've seen as far as Twitter, is that you have to be really careful in how you criticize them, mostly because right now in the social climate that we're in, there are basically some keywords which, if you say it, you will be deemed like a part of this group over here that they're just never going to listen to.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because you might have something valid to tell them as far as a criticism, and because of how you might have put it, they will instantly just completely write you off.
Yeah.
So it's like a minefield.
It's called tact. T-A-C-T.
Yes.
Tact.
My favorite word.
Be constructive with your criticism. If you have something you're critical of, offer a solution maybe. Maybe suggest something different they could have done or could do in the future.
Yeah, none of that whole,
it
was bad and you should feel bad.
Yeah. Don't go on a cursing rant that's all misspelled and typed poorly and, has a ton of exclamation marks and tags every person you could think to tag. And don't be like that, because then they are going to just completely dismiss what you're saying. Type a constructive, well-written. I mean, you have extra characters on Twitter now. Congratulations.
Hooray!
You don't have to spell everything wrong and abbreviate everything. Write it out intelligently with full text. Use punctuation so people know where your sentence ends. Don't put a million exclamation points to exaggerate things that don't need to be exaggerated.
I wonder if we'll finally figure out what covfefe means.
Confif. Covfefe. Oh,
maybe he'll
president.
spell the whole thing out. Like there's tact, there's empathy, maybe trying to understand where they're trying to go with the story. There's, as far as the artwork is concerned, maybe like pulling up like a backlog of this particular artist's work to get a better idea of exactly the type of art you can expect, and to maybe see like how they've done well in the past, how they might be coming up short recently, maybe taking into account how often the book comes out. There's a lot to consider when it comes to relaying constructive criticism.
Remember, you're dealing with humans here, and if you're addressing an entire company instead of just like one editor or one writer, you're probably just yelling at some poor, public works person that, works in the closet of their company,
It's like
that works part-time and is trying to just pay for college or something,
Yeah,
so,
I'm just imagining a college kid like on a drafting table, just going like, shh.
And I think the internet's getting better at this, but we still have a little ways to go. Be constructive. Remember, you're talking to a human, and you will probably get much better results that way.
Yeah,
especially if your criticism is valid. Try to offer a solution if you can think of one. Don't just leave it empty-handed and just assume it'll be fixed. Offer a solution, and maybe they'll take it into account. Like I think pricing, for example, for DC, people are complaining, these new 52 covers, they're great, but you increase the price and it's so expensive now just to get, a handful of comics every week, It's costing us $200 to get all the issues we like. And they're like, all right, we heard you loud and clear. We're going to reduce the price a bit. We're going to release extra, issues that are standalone of the comic every month. in addition to the main line that runs through. So that was great. They listened to their audience and they did something. Then when they mixed all the worlds together, because people were demanding on Twitter that they get their one specific version of a character back, that was a little maybe threw the baby out with the bathwater there.
Yeah, that's an example of because we're dealing with humans. One of the things that can happen when you're trying to relay criticism is whether or not that person has, a thick enough skin to realize, this is just another person voicing their opinion.
And you never know when they're having a bad day,
Yeah.
You might just catch them on the worst possible day,
Yeah, like either that or it could go the other route and they're maybe the type of person who is just trying to get approval and attention and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then end up going like
too far.
Too far.
Yeah.
As in 2 Nightwings too far.
Oh, well, I'm sure we have a lot more to say on this topic. I'm sure we'll touch on it again, but it's late. It's like 2 a.m. for us here.
Yes, it is.
And we're running out of camera time here. So let's wrap this up. Neeson Night. Remember, we publish our podcast every Wednesday, every week for your enjoyment. Hit the Books Podcast. We're on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, and more. That wraps up another mediocre edition of Hit the Books Podcast.
Mediocre.
Thank you all for sticking with us. If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on your podcast services of choice and on YouTube. We're on Twitter at HTBvids. We're on Facebook at /HitTheBooks. Our website is www.htbvids.com. We are now on Instagram, Hit the Books. I'm your host, Chris Holcomb.
And I'm Emery Saunders.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.